Hello, I'm Karen, and this is Unexpected Adornments. I like to do subscription beadbox unboxings, jewelry tutorials, hauls, and share completed pieces I've made. Today, I'm unboxing the August 2025 Bargain Bead Box. This is my very first subscription bead box. I've purchased a few things from their sister site, Beadbox Bargains, but I decided it was finally time to subscribe. This collection is called Bohemian Nights. It sort of mixes the celestial with a free-spirited bohemian theme. Let's take a look. First thing we have is a gold-plated brass and cubic zirconia pendant. This is a gorgeous color gold. I'm not really a gold girl, but I think this is beautiful, especially with the turquoise cubic zirconia. And I love the kind of filigree feel to it. It's also really nice when a pendant comes with a jump ring, especially since this is 18 karat gold plated. Next we have gold plated brass and cubic zirconia star charms. I guess these could also be pendants if you were doing kind of a delicate or more dainty necklace. They remind me a lot of a compass or a North Star. It's kind of like they're helping you find your way in the dark. Next, we have some heat-treated magnesite beads. These are 8mm rounds. These are really pretty. I like that they're sort of a semi-gloss in a way. Beautiful, beautiful color though. It's a nice size too, and they have some weight to them. Then we have a synthetic man-made turquoise. These are 6mm matte finish. Curious to see the difference. Oh, they are really matte. I wasn't sure if I would like these or not, but now that I see them, the matte finish is really what makes them. They have a beautiful matrix, just gorgeous. We'll put those right next to the magnesite. Now we have another 6mm, but this time it's a blue agate, dyed and heat treated. And it looks like I got the light variant. I know when I watched the preview for this box, there was a dark variant and a light variant of these. I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get the darker variant of this because there's already so much sort of turquoise or aqua colors. And I believe these are also lightly faceted. They kind of have, it's a little bit hard to see. It's a very soft facet. Next, we have 10 pieces of 18 karat gold-plated brass moon phase beads. Oh, I like these. These are quite thick. So the moons are drilled right down the middle, so they could kind of hug another bead if maybe you didn't want it to be a moon, but you wanted it to just be a design element. That could be really pretty. Then we have some 4mm golden rutile quartz. So these are faceted, but they're almost a matte finish. I really like the neutral tones in this. Very pretty beads. Next we have 8mm star cut carnelian. It says they're dyed, and these are faceted beads. Oh, they're so pretty. I really like these. Oh my goodness, I'm just a sucker for carnelian. These are just gorgeous. And I love the way they catch the light. Then we have 6x5mm faceted crystal lantern beads in teal iris. These, I just love these. These are so pretty. And I love this shape. They kind of remind me a little bit of London Blue Topaz, if you've ever seen that stone. And we have some really teeny tiny 3x2mm crystal faceted rondelle beads in a bohemian mix. I like the way it includes some neutral tones. And there's that green accent that is new. They kind of look like candy. Next we have 10 pieces of 14x10mm glass crescent moon beads in champagne. It seems like that shimmer is on one side and they're clear on the other, so you just get glints of it. Very pretty. And they're drilled right down the middle, just like the previous crescent moons. So you could use them to wrap around a bead if you wanted to. The next bag has 10 pieces of 13mm glass moon and star coin beads in steel blue. These are really beautiful, beautiful color. They have kind of a crescent moon in the center and then stars pressed into the glass around it. I like that they have a nice thickness to them too. I already think I have an idea for these. I think this is the last of the beads, but this is 20 pieces of 10mm crystal faceted round beads in jade blue. And these are an opaque crystal, very pretty, kind of milky. They really catch the light. Next, we have 2 pieces that are 9x7 18-karat gold-plated brass and cubic zirconia moon charms. Just a teeny tiny blingy moon. So cute. Now we have 4 pieces of 22x16 18-karat gold-plated brass crescent moon links. One of the things that made me choose the bargain bead box was that they include a lot of findings. I don't have a lot. I have a lot of beads in my stash, but I don't have a lot of findings. So that was a huge decision point for me. These are very pretty. I really like the color of the gold in this box. It seems pretty consistent throughout. It's this sort of lighter 18-karat gold color, which I really think is pretty. Then we have a 30x21mm 18-karat gold-plated brass chandelier pendant link. I like that it has multiple holes in the center. That gives you some options in terms of whether you want to put dangles or if you want to put maybe a wire wrap bead there. Kind of sparks some different inspiration. And we have 8 pieces of 10x7 18-karat gold-plated stainless steel moon charm. These are a little bit chunkier crescent moons. Again, in that light gold color, very pretty. And then we have 100 pieces. Oh yay, I love that. 3.5x2.5 faceted cubic spacer beads. Oh, I love these. These are great because they really catch the light. I can see a lot of uses for these. Ooh, and then we have 100 pieces of 6mm filigree bead caps. I always love it when they get 100 of something. Gives you room to play. Very, very pretty. And again, they did a really good job of keeping the same gold tones. I don't think that's easy. I think one of the reasons I shy away from gold a lot is because there's so many different tones of it. It's hard to find components that go together unless you have everything with you when you're making a purchase. So this is really a treat not to have to worry about matching your golds. And then we've got a 26mm 18-karat gold finished brass and cubic zirconia moon fold over clasp. I don't think I've ever had a fold over clasp before. That's really cool. And this one, it's just gorgeous. Look at that. And then finally, we have a meter of 3x2mm stainless steel cable chain. Very nice. I think this type of chain is sort of a workhorse, so it's always a pleasure to have a little bit to add to your stash. I immediately fell in love with the 13mm glass moon and star coins in steel blue. I want to include these in my first project with this box. I'm making a pair of earrings, but I want to use these like a cabochon and make them my focals. I created a tutorial for you to show you how to do something similar or inspire you to use another coin bead this way. So I'm going to glue 2 of my coin beads onto a piece of stiffened felt. So this is just felt that you can buy on Amazon or in the craft store. And it's not the floppy felt. This must have some sort of sizing or glue in it that makes it a little bit stiffer. And that will allow me to do a little bit of bead embroidery around the coins. So the first thing I'm going to do is get a little bit of E6000 out. Mine's a little thick. And just spread that with the toothpick. I don't want it seeping out too much because I want to be able to get my needle into the felt. And if there's too much glue on those edges, that'll be hard. I'm just going to go ahead and position that in the middle as best I can and then press it down. And I'm going to leave these overnight to dry. I want to make sure they're securely attached before I start trying to add any beads around them. I'm using Nymo beading thread and size 12 beading needles. So I cut off about a little under 3 feet of thread and I've tied a double knot in the end of my thread. And the first thing I want to do is come up from behind my bead. I want to be near the bead, but not right on top of it, because this is where I'm going to start my row for my seed beads. Go ahead and pull that thread through. I know it's a little hard to see because it's white on white, but once we get the beads on, it'll be a little easier. I like to leave a long tail just because I use it to tie my final knot once I'm done embroidering the beads. So I have two colors of beads that I'm going to start with. The sort of gray colored beads are Toho Round 11-Ohs. They're transparent rainbow frosted black diamond. The darker assortment that looks sort of electroplated with blues and greens and some purples are just some beads I had in my stash. I don't really know what they are or where they came from, but I thought they'd look pretty with these coins. So I'm going to start with the lighter gray, pour out some of these, and I'm just going to do one row. But I like to start by picking up 8 to 10 beads. So I've got 8 beads on my needle. I'm going to go ahead, slide those down, and just sort of wrap them around my bead. Then I'm going to put my needle in about maybe a millimeter or less from the edge of this last bead. I've placed my needle just past the bead. This is to give me a little bit of room for the thread that I'll use in between the beads to tack the beads into place. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that down. I'm kind of holding my thread taut underneath. I'm going to bring my needle up close to the edge of the coin. So my needle is between the second and third bead. I'm going to come up, bring it up, and then make sure I bring my thread down between that second and third bead. I'm going to put my needle back down. So I'm sort of creating a loop over the thread, and that will hold those first 2 beads in place. Just like that. I'm going to go down 2 more beads now. So now I'm between the 4th and the 5th bead. I'm going to do the same thing. Come up, come over between the 4th and the 5th bead. And tack those 2 down. And I've got one more set. So now I'm coming up between the 6th and the 7th bead. Pull my needle up. Make that loop. And now they're all tacked down. So now I want to come back to that start where near where my knot is. Bring my thread up. And then thread it through all the beads I just tacked down. This is just sort of reinforcing. So now my thread is going through all my beads. Then I'm going to insert my needle right past that last bead and bring my needle through. Now we've reinforced that row of beads and I'm ready to embroider the next set. This time, instead of starting at that first bead, I'm going to bring my needle up between the 2nd and 3rd bead and sew through those one more time. Now I'm ready to pick up my next set of beads. Okay, so I've got 8 more beads on my needle. I'm going to go ahead and slide them down, wrap them around. So I've got something like this, and then I want to leave a little space again, just like we did on that first row. So I'm going to put my needle maybe about a millimeter in front of that last bead, and then I'm going to sew down. Next, I'll go back and tack these beads and continue working my way around the coin bead. I went ahead and tacked in that second set of beads off camera. So now as I'm finishing up this row, I need to make a decision. I've loaded 8 more seed beads on my thread. If I wrap them around, I can see that I don't have enough room for 8 more beads. And I'm worried that if I try to fit a 4th set of beads in, I might not have enough room to evenly space my beads out. So instead of just doing another row with 8, I'm going to add enough beads to my thread to complete this row. I threaded 4 more beads on my needle, so now I have 12, and I think that'll work. It gives me a little bit of space there between the start of that first set of beads and this final set. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch that down. I'm going to go back and tack all those beads in place off camera so you don't have to watch me doing the same thing over and over. I've tacked all my beads in place, and then once again, I'm going back 2 past the start of that set of beads. I'm going to reinforce the beads I just added and go past 2 on the other side too, just to help them stay aligned. I'm basically coming back to where I initially started my first set of beads. So now I have my whole first row of beads on, and I'm ready to start a new row. So I went ahead and added my second row. I've got all my beads tacked down. I have both my thread ends. So I'm just going to tie a knot and then put a tiny dot of Hypo Cement on my knot. I tied a double knot, put a dot of Hypo Cement on it, and then just trim the ends. So now I'm ready to trim around my beads. And I want to leave, again, maybe a little bit less than 1 millimeter around the edges. I also want to be careful not to get too close because you don't want to cut your threads. I like to use embroidery scissors, but any scissors that are sharp will work. So I'm just going to trim close to the edge, but sort of staying just outside the beads. And then trim all the way around. Then you should have something like this. I would prefer to use wire guardians as my loops for this, but I only have silver ones. So I thought I'd try something new. So basically, I'm making an eye pin and gluing it down. So the first thing I want to do is trace a circle onto cardboard. I am just using a little bit of cardboard from a cereal box. And I'm going to use this as a template. So I'm going to go ahead, trace a circle. I'm going to cut my cardboard inside the tracing. You can see how I did it on this one. You want to leave some room for stitching your backing fabric to the stiffened felt, and you don't want to have to stitch through cardboard. So I leave about 2 to 3 millimeters, or approximately 1/8 of an inch. That looks perfect. I'm using 24 gauge wire, and I cut a piece about 3 inches long. I'm going to start by making a wire wrap loop. I'm going to wrap it down about 3 times. All the way around the back. Then just trim off that excess. Need to tuck in my little tail. And that looks good. So what my plan is that I want to center that on the moon, and we'll end up with something that looks like that. What I want to do next is divide my cardboard circle in half. So I drew a line down the middle, and I'm just going to cut that in half. And I'm going to cut just a tiny sliver of cardboard out of that, about the width of the wire. And what I'll do next is use some E6000 glue to glue my wire eye pin and these 2 pieces of cardboard to the back of my stiffened felt. I'm going to do that off camera because it's a little bit fiddly. So I've glued my eye pin in between the 2 pieces of cardboard. So I'm going to set this aside to dry for about 15 to 30 minutes. And then I'll apply E6000 probably just to the cardboard. I don't want to get glue around the felt if I can avoid it, but I'll apply the E6000 to the cardboard and then put this little piece of faux leather on the back, and that'll be my backing. I glued the faux leather onto my piece. I didn't pull the glue all the way out to the edge. I want to leave that felt edge clear just so that I don't have to put my needle through dried glue. So next we want to just trim this. And basically I just want to cut it the same shape as I cut my felted sheet. And because I didn't glue that edge completely, it's really easy to slip. If you have small scissors at least, it's easy to slip your scissors right behind the wire wrap loop there and just keep continuing to cut around that edge. Now the earring looks like this. Now I just want to add the other wire wrap loop to this end. So since I already showed you how I do the one, I'll just do this one off camera. Now I have my 2 wire wrap loops and I'm ready to start finishing the edge of this component. And for the edging, I'm going to use 2 different colors. So the first one I'm using is this Toho mix. It's got some sort of blues, greens, and a little bit of purples. And these are 11-0 beads with sort of a matte finish. And then I have some 15-0 beads that are a darker bluish color. So I strung my needle with about 2.5 feet of the Nymo thread again. and I want to go just through the back of the faux leather, and I'm going in between my felt and the faux leather so that I can pull my knot right in there. Then it will sit in there, and when I get to the end I can just tie off the tail. So I'm going to go about the width of 1 bead over and go out my faux leather, angled so that it's coming out the back of the faux leather, and I came down about 2-3 millimeters or about 1/8 of an inch. You want that space on the edge of your faux leather so that it doesn't rip as you're poking your needle in and out. If it's too close to the edge, you just risk that when you're pulling your thread through, it might rip through the faux leather. It's just a little bit fragile. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my needle through, and now I've got my knot in between the felt sheet and the leather, like this. Then I want to load 3 beads on my needle. So I have an 11/0, a 15/0, and an 11/0. I'm going to place another stitch through my faux leather about the width of the 11/0 bead, angling my needle so that I'm poking through the felt sheet right next to that row of beads that I've already embroidered. I'm going to pull this through, and then I want to place these beads up against the top of my piece to make a little triangle. So I want to pull my beads and keep the thread a little bit slack. I don't want to pull it tight. So then I want to hold those beads in place with my finger, and then I'm going to place my needle up through from the bottom up through that last 11/0 bead and pull it through. And that will cause that 11/0 bead to sit vertically. My little 15/0 will sit on top of it to form this little triangle. Now this one's going to be angled a little bit weird for a while, but we'll fix that once we go all the way around. That's where we'll end our stitches. So you've got this now. Now I want to load another 15/0 and then an 11/0 on my needle. Now I want to sew back through the faux leather again about the width of one of the 11/0 beads, then angle my needle back up again, pull my thread through, and again just sort of position the beads with your finger. You don't want to pull it too tight. Come up again just through that last 11/0 bead, and that'll make your little triangle edge. So I'll continue this pattern all the way around. The one exception is when I get to my wire wrap loops. Let me go ahead and complete this half, and then I'll show you what I do when I get to the wire wrap loop. I've added my edging all the way around this half. You can see that one's still a little bit wonky, but we'll fix that at the end. And rather than try to put another of these 15/0 beads here, what I'm going to do is just skip the 15/0 bead, go ahead, wrap my thread around the wire wrap loop, and just start with another 11/0 bead. So I'm going to follow the same process, but just not include the 15/0 bead. So I'm angling my needle through the back of the faux leather, up through the felted sheet. I'm going to place my thread behind my wrapped loop. Then I'll go ahead and sew back up through that 11/0 bead. So just to make this extra secure and so the beads don't kind of want to bend backwards, I'm going to also wrap my thread around the front of the wrap loop. So I'll enter this bead on the other side from the top, sew it down, but I'm going to make sure my thread is coming in front of my loop this time. So I'm sort of just capturing that wrap loop. And then I'll angle my needle through the felted sheet, and I'm going to go back out where I created that first stitch. So right there, pull my needle through, and then I'm just going to sew this thread up through the top, but I'm not going to go through the bead this time. I'm just going to kind of angle my thread through to the felted sheet, and I'm just going to thread my needle through the front of the felt sheet and back out just below this second bead on the other side of my wire wrap loop. So now it looks like this. Got my thread coming out the front, and I'll go up through my 11/0 bead there. And then I've secured those beads on either side of the wrap loop. Then I'll pick up my next 15/0 and 11/0, stitch up through that 11/0, and I just continue my edging on this other side, and then do the same thing. When I get here, I'll just skip the 15/0 and come up through this 11/0 that's already in position. I finished my edging all the way around. I placed my tails on the back and tied a knot, and I placed a single drop of the Hypo Cement glue on my knot. Now I'm just going to trim off my ends with a sharp pair of scissors. Then you can use nylon pliers to straighten your ends if you need to. And here's my final component. So now I'm going to make a drop for the bottom of this. I'm going to use one of the glass crescent moon beads, one of the magnesite beads, one of the lantern beads, and 2 of the Filigree Bead Caps. And this is a ball head pin that I purchased from Beadbox Bargains. I added a wire wrap loop to my 2 bead caps and the lantern bead on this ball head pin to create a dangle. I'm going to use my 24 gauge wire to wrap the crescent moon and the magnesite bead so I can attach them. So I made a loop for the top, and I'm going to insert that into the bottom of my coin component. So I'll just go ahead and wrap that loop. And here's my crescent moon added. This has sort of a front and a back depending on which side you want to show. I wanted this glassier side to be my front. The back has a little bit more of a painted look to it. I'm going to connect my magnesite bead next. So I already started my loop. And I'm just going to make a wire wrap loop on this end. And then I'll make a second loop. And then I'll attach my dangle. And there's my drops. I'm just going to add an ear wire to the top. So I have some 18 karat gold plated ear wires. These were in my stash. Slide it on and then close my loop. And here are my finished earrings. My channel is new, so if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And here's how they look from the back. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.